Hey everybody, I hope you're having a fabulous Thursday. This is Tara with the Painted Cicada, and I'm so glad that you guys are going to hop on with me tonight. We are going to paint a beautiful watercolor butterfly. I love working with watercolors because they have a mind of their own. They kind of do their own thing, and so sometimes I just like to get them out and play and see what they do. So let me make sure I'm live in all the right places here, and then we will get started. Oops. Always a bummer when I misclick. Oh, there I am. Okay. Hey, Deb. Okay, I know I'm live in the right place now. Awesome. All right, so the supplies for tonight are super simple. You're just going to need watercolor paper, some watercolors, and some paintbrushes. And we're going to walk through this step by step. Super easy. Hey, Tammy. Hey, Carrie. I'm so glad. Hey, Tracy. I'm so glad you guys are here tonight. Oh, girl, I had a moment. I cut all my hair off. I got so sick of my hair. And my husband always says, I don't care what you do with it, don't cut it all off. What do? I cut it all off. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like every 5 or 6 years I go through like a hair crisis, and anyway, this is what happened. Actually, what I was thinking when I did it was I'm always hiding behind my hair. Like I feel like if I don't do my hair, I feel ugly, or if I don't do my hair, I feel dirty. And so I was like, I'm going to stop hiding behind my hair, and I just cut it all off. I don't know. It was kind of liberating. Anyway, so that's what happened. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, Linda. I'm glad you guys are here. Okay, I'm going to take my face off this screen and let me do this. Okay. It's Canson XL watercolor paper. And then tonight I'll be using these. I have a little tin. These are called Prima Confections. The color is the Classics. I really like this tin because I can make any color I need from it. It runs about $20. When I'm creating for myself, if I'm creating professionally, I like to use Dr. P.H. Martin's watercolors, but they are pricey. So when I'm creating for myself and just for fun, I like to use these Prima Confections tins. I actually have about 15 of them that I've accumulated over the years. But the Classics tin is the one I always go back to. I love, love, love it. But any kind of watercolor that you have is fine. This tray, this enamel tray, I love it for watercolors because it cleans up so easily. I actually got this at Tractor Supply. I don't know what it's supposed to be, but I'm like, I need that for my paint. So paintbrushes, watercolor, watercolor paper. I will also mention too, I do keep my watercolor brushes separate. Uh-oh, you guys can't hear me? Eek. If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. My dogs can hear me. They're outside my door like, I can hear you, Mommy. Okay, I got it. I can hear you. Okay, good. I get nervous. Okay. So I keep my watercolor brushes separate from brushes that I use for acrylic or mixed media, because acrylic and mixed media is really, really tough on brushes. So let me show you an example. So like after a while, like my brushes get stiff and they kind of get crunchy. And so I like to keep my watercolor brushes separate. I have a separate set of brushes, and I don't spend a ton of money. My favorite watercolor brushes are Royal and Langnickel Aqualon. They're called Aqualon Aqualon. But I've also used like the Hobby Lobby, like really cheap brushes. Just as long as you have a nice fine soft tip, they're perfect for watercolor. So grab some brushes, and then of course you're going to need some water. And I have a little, this is my secret weapon that I use a lot with watercolor. This is a bottle. I think it was filled with like body oil or something from the dollar store. But it's the best squirt bottle ever, and I just keep it filled with water in case I need it. So usually what I'll do when I get started is I'll give my watercolors just a little mist to get them wet, and I'll give my paper a little mist as well. Now, when you're working with watercolors, there's a few different ways you can do it. The two most common ways is wet on wet, which means you use wet paint and you put it on wet paper, or wet on dry, which means you use wet paint and you put it on dry paper, and they will both give you two very different techniques, two very different looks on your paper. But today I'm going to start with wet on wet. So grab a nice big brush and some water and just get your paper nice and wet. You don't want it so wet that if you pick it up it drips, but you want it wet enough that it kind of saturates in and it feels wet to the touch. So just get some paint on there or water on there. And Deb, I have to tell you, I was thinking about you because I got out my my bottle of water to fill up my watercolor cup, and I was like, this is a waste. And then I was like, where did I hear this before? And then I was like, oh, I remember Deb did that. But yeah, usually I get it from just from the faucet, and I've got I'm trying to reorganize, and I've got so much stuff in my bathroom sink because I'm not done reorganizing. It was a much bigger project. And my kitchen sink, so today it was the kids' day to do the dishes. And it's 8:12 here in Ohio. Do you think they're done yet? No, they're not. Because I'm going to have to remind them 10 more times before bedtime. So I didn't want to mess with the kitchen. So I used my bottle of water. So I was thinking about you, Deb. All right, so get your watercolor paper nice and wet. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to have, you can make your background any color. The sample I showed today was actually an acrylic painting that I did, and I'm going to redo that today in watercolor with you guys. It had a really soft yellow background. Yes, normal teenagers. I have good kids. I really do. Susan, obviously I love my kids, but these teenage years, I'm telling you. All right, so when I work with pan watercolors, I'm just going to get some color here, put it on your plate or your palette, and you just want to thin it out. We're going to start, unlike acrylic, when you work with watercolors, you often will go thin layers to your thicker, more opaque colors. So we're going to start really lightly. So you barely want any paint on this. So thin it out. Now I have kind of a sunshine, right? So I'm going to make a circle. Let me pull this down so it's in the frame. I squished my video feed. Now I can't see what you all can see. Okay, there you go. All right, so my page is wet, so I'm going to put it on, and I'm just going to lightly spread this out. If it's too yellow, too thick, just add water. Remember, this first layer we just want to be nice and thin. It's almost like a glaze. Think about, maybe just glazing this paper with a nice thin yellow color. And I'm sorry if I'm missing some of your comments, guys. Yes, good kids put things off. My kids are good. They have good hearts. They're just, it's more interesting to hang out with their friends. And it just reminds me about all those times that I, gave my mom a hard time. And I was like, I'll do it later. And you think I did it later? Nope. What goes around comes around, right? My mom's always telling me this is how you were. So I don't know how well this is picking up on the camera since it's really light, but the background has some different gradient to it. It's not all the same. And when you put the watercolor on the wet paper, it does that. It's going to move, and it kind of has a mind of its own. Hi, Christy. Glad you could hop on. And so the background does not, don't worry about this being perfect, because we are going to layer, and that's kind of exciting. Yes, I always feel like I have to keep up with the conversations. I'm just going to focus on the art tonight, and I promise I will go back through, and if I've missed any questions or anything, I'll address those. Another thing about watercolor, unlike acrylic, it's not going to adhere anything to your page. So if you get like fuzzies, or like sometimes I'll get like a paintbrush bristle on your page, once it's dry, you can just brush it right off. It's not like acrylic where it'll stick in there. So don't let those little things give you a hang up. Yeah, so this is my page here. I just used yellow, very, very, very thin. Added some water and swished it around. You can't go wrong with this. Another thing about watercolor is that you can lift watercolor. So if you put it on and you don't like it, you can use a wet paper towel, and you can kind of blot it up. So like if I was unhappy with, actually, let me just show you. Let me throw down some more paint here like a crazy person. Okay. So like if I had too much, let's say I didn't make that sunshine right there, right? And I'm like, oh, but I want to add in, I want to add in some white with some sunshine. I can just use a wet paper towel and I can lift that. Watercolor is not permanent. So don't be afraid to do any little fixes that you need to, just by using a baby wipe or a wet paper towel. You can lift watercolor. And to be honest, I don't like where I just lifted that. So I'm just going to color that back over. All right. And then I want my sun to be a little off center. So see, you can kind of play with it. There's no right or wrong. Nothing's permanent. Just go with the flow. That's not part of the lesson. I was just showing you that you can kind of fix things. Okay. So we've got the plain white. That's kind of our sun glow in the background there. And just a nice pale yellow. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another really thin yellow here. So just add some water to some yellow, make it nice and thin. And I'm just going to add like the tiniest touch of green to this to make like a yellow green here. And again, it can be more yellow if you want it to be more yellow. It can be more green if you want it to, whatever your preference is. And what I'm going to do is just kind of tap some of this in. Now make sure your background is still kind of wet. If it's not wet, you want to make sure you add in some water. You want this to move and blend around. So we're just going to kind of create a splotchy greenish yellow. This is kind of another background layer. This is just going to add some depth. And you'll see I'm moving quickly. I'm not thinking about it. I'm just tapping this on there. This is just kind of this big, far away flowers and field that we're not going to be up close. So tap it on. If you do too much, you can always, you know, kind of blotch it out. I'm going to lift this closer. I feel like I can't get my lighting right. I was messing with it, and now that's too yellow. Go lower. It's too dark. I just feel like this really pretty color is not showing up on camera. But right now we're working very light, so that's why. All right, so we did our yellow background, leaving a little white area for the sunshine. And then I created a yellow, green, green, yellow, and I kind of splotched that around at the bottom. No rhyme or reason, I just put it on there. And we were working wet on wet. We wanted our paper to still feel kind of wet. All right. And your paper should still be kind of moist at the bottom since we just did that. Sorry, I know people hate that word, moist. It should still be a little wet at the bottom. Not dripping, but you should be able to, it should feel cool to the touch. And then what we're going to do now, I want you to get a thinner paintbrush. If your paper feels dry, and only do this if your paper feels like it's drying, different papers are going to have different absorbencies and dry at different rates. But do not ever be afraid to kind of just, when we're working abstract like this, don't be afraid to just kind of tap some water in there if you need to. If your paper feels nice and cool, you do not have to do that. All right, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to add in my first layer of far away greenery. So I'm going to keep this yellow green that I've got going on, and I'm going to want to choose maybe a medium size round brush. Numbers are different in between brands, but maybe like a size 8, which is, it's kind of large for watercolor. Or a 6. You just want it to have kind of a nice round brush with a tip. So yeah, I'm going to use this 6 here. And then I am just going to take kind of one swoop of green. I'm going to mix it in. Oops, that was dry, so maybe I need a little more than one swoop. But I want to turn this a little more green, and we're still working pale. So go ahead and add some water. You want to thin that out. I would rather you start with it too pale and be able to add more color than to have really opaque or thick watercolor. So make it nice and thin. All right, I think I've thinned that out good enough. Okay, so what I'm gonna do for this, sometimes you can check it. Sometimes I check it on a paper towel to see how vibrant that color is gonna be. So I'm gonna take this round brush, and what I'm gonna do is start at the top, and we're gonna do strokes of grass. Now these are meant to be far away. That's why I want them to be nice and transparent, very thin color we're using. So you're going to start maybe just the tip of this watercolor this watercolor paintbrush, and just use the tip. And as you go down, add more pressure so that it becomes a thicker line. And we're making grass, so y'all, it doesn't have to be a perfect straight line. Like, grass bends and snaps and breaks, and because my page is still a little wet, some of that's going to move and blend in, and I'm probably going to add, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 of these far away green grass, different lengths. Just vary it up a little bit. But you kind of want it to move and blend a little bit. Start with very light pressure on the tip and then push down and just go right off the bottom of that page. You can add as many as you want. Let's go crazy. What's that song from Prince? Is it called Let's Go Crazy? I'm not going to bust out into song. Well, that's what that comment just made me think of. So add in some far away grass. I'm going to give this just a second. We don't need a lot of time, but I'm just going to let this absorb and dry and move just a little bit. And this is messy, y'all. This is not perfect. It's moving, it's blending. Some of that grass is bleeding. That's what we want. We want it to be clear in some sections and to blend into that background in others. This is a very subtle piece. It is hard for perfectionists, Deb. I started, so when I was younger, I've always been an artist. I mainly worked with oils and acrylics when I was younger. And then I kind of had this art reawakening, I would say maybe 2016, 17, 18. I really started working with watercolors, and it was such a different experience because you can be very exact with acrylics. And it's very easy to let it dry, cover up your mistake with acrylics. Especially if you work, you know, the thicker the acrylic, the more controllable it is. Watercolor, it just doesn't behave this. It's like it behaves the exact opposite of acrylic. With acrylic, you start with your darks and you move to your lights. And with watercolor, you start with your lights and you move to your darks. It's hard to let go of the perfection. Now, there are some people who do some absolutely amazing realistic watercolor pieces, and that takes a lot of experience with watercolor because you really have to, it never behaves the same every single time, so you really have to get to know your watercolors and your stroke techniques and the way that you hold the brush. And I don't know, there's so many factors, but it's really difficult for perfectionists to use watercolors, I think, because there are sometimes you just You just don't know. You think it's going to do one thing and it goes off and does another. All right. Anyway, I went off on a crazy tangent. But basically what we're going to do is we're just going to make this a little more concentrated. So just add a couple swipes of color. You don't need to go crazy. Remember, anytime that we have a little bit of downtime from painting and mixing, this color or this water is going to evaporate out a little bit. So just add a little more pigment in there and you should be good. Add a little more pigment, don't add any water. If you need to test it, see kind of where you're at with that color, just go ahead and put some on your paper towel. Don't forget, you can always add more pigment, but you can't, it's always harder to take, you can't take the pigment out. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add one more layer. This time I'm going to add fewer. I actually went a little crazy with these. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I did 9, so maybe I'll do 5 or 6 this time. And just vary the length. Just start thin, move down to the bottom. My paper is starting to dry, so I'm transitioning from a wet on wet technique to a wet on dry. Right now it's kind of in betweeny. Oops. Hi, Gloria. It's nice to see you. All right, so there is my layer number 2 of the grass, and I'm going to add in just a little more pigment, and I'm going to do a 3rd layer of this grass, maybe 2 or 3, and you'll notice on this one I put one kind of crooked, a little bit crooked, bent over. Maybe this time add 1 or 2 that aren't completely straight, just for variation. And what's going to happen is this is going to give the appearance of the grass being closer and farther away. And I certainly am no grass expert, so if you need to add more, add more. It's all up to you on how many or how few you add. Weirdest notifications on my phone when I'm doing these lives. All right. I'm having fun tonight. It's been a long time since I've gotten my watercolors out. I think I'm in a watercolor mood for a while. All right. Now I am going to transition, like I said, from wet on wet to wet on dry. So I'm going to let my paper, I think I'm in a pretty good place. I could tell when I did this 3rd layer of grass that my paper is drying. Do not be afraid if you've got a dryer, if you've got craft heat gun, or if you have a hair dryer, you can always zap your page. Don't be afraid to do that if you need to. Usually with watercolors, it doesn't take very long. Oh, Susan, you're so sweet. I hope your paint party is going fabulous tonight. What are you painting? Woo, mountain time. Y'all are early. Yeah, it's 8:30 here. I haven't eaten dinner yet. It's been a crazy day. Although I'll tell you, I splurged and I went and I got myself Olive Garden to go because tomorrow is my birthday and I always want to go to Olive Garden and nobody in the family likes it. Um, so I got myself Olive Garden to go and that's what I'm eating when I'm done with this and I can't wait. I'm gonna carb up. Ooh, I love pumpkins. I love October. I love fall. Angelica, you are a fantastic artist and you can totally do watercolors. So hop on with me anytime. Paint with me anytime, Angelica. Deb, we could be Olive Garden buddies. If we ever get to meet in person, we're going to have to go to Olive Garden. All right. So my paper, thank you for the birthday wishes. 41, y'all. I am going to be 41. My husband sent me a message this morning, and I don't even know the exact number, but he was like, happy 14,952nd day on the planet. And I was like, what? I was like, did you calculate that or did you look it up or what? He's so goofy. Girl, I wish I felt like a baby. I do not. I feel, I don't know. My husband, he is 50 and I feel older than he feels, I think. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because as women, like, we're always worried about our appearance and wrinkles and all that stuff. All right. I'm going to move on to the flowers, and we're going to do a similar technique with the flowers where we're going to work from very pale to make it look like background. And then we're going to do a front layer to make it look like it's closer. So I am going to use, I want to do more of a pink. So I'm going to get, you can do like a pink or a pinky purple, works really well with this. I tend to stay away from purples when I do yellow and green because that kind of turns muddy. So I just want a really, really pale pink. And depending on, you know, the watercolors that you have, your pink might be different from my pink. You can even like pale, you know, red will go pale pink if you make it thin. So actually, I probably should have done that because this is going to be kind of neon. I mean, mix in just a smidge of red, maybe a smidge of purple. Tone this down a bit. Okay. But the idea here, we want this to be light. So like I need to add some water because I added too much pigment. We're going transparent, very thin, very light to start with. So yeah, I need to, I'm just going to use this big old brush and add in some water that way. All right. Did y'all see that? I tried to paint with the wrong side of the brush. I'm telling you, there's some days it's a miracle I make it through the day. Okay, so get some nice thin paint on your brush. And then what I'm going to do here, just using the tip very, very lightly, I'm going to make a line here in the grass, maybe just slightly above your highest grass point. And I'm just going to go down maybe, I don't know, just a little bit. You can almost not even see that line. It's very, very pale. And this one, I'm working on a 9x12 paper, and this might be, I don't know, 2.5 inches. So that's going to be my flower stem. And then I'm just going to tap in like right off the stem. I need to lift this up. All right. Just these really organic shapes. So I'm going to start kind of thin at the bottom, and then my shapes are going to get thicker at the top. And watch how I do this. I'm not thinking about it. It's just kind of tap, smudge, tap, smudge. That's it. That's my flower. It's not, again, it's hard to do if you're a perfectionist, but you really just need to get in there. Just put some paint on the paper. It's abstract, right? These are background flowers. They're not meant to be bright and perfect, and we don't need to see details. All right, so that one's far away. I might add one more swipe of color in here as we get closer. And since my background is more dry, that pigment is going to stay right where I put it. All right, so background flower number 2. It's going to be a little bit closer. And I don't want it to be in the same plane. So move it up, move it down. It really doesn't matter. This time, make your line a little bit longer. So last time I was about 3 inches. Maybe this time I might do like 4 inches there. And it's the same technique. So here at the bottom, I want, a petal or two. And I'm just tapping. Tap, tap, smudge. The next one is going to be just, a little bit bigger. We're just adding it's kind of weird, smudgy things. And then here at the top, maybe this one might be a little pointed, like it's the tip of the flower. Our exact measurements. It really, it's freeing not to have exact measurements. I think when I teach classes, the hardest thing, the thing that I struggle with the most, whether I'm teaching online or in person, is I am, like I say all the time, there's no rules here. I do what I want. I really do what I want. And when people are watching me or when they come to me to learn what we're doing, they want to know, what's this exact color? How did you get that exact color? Was it, 1 ounce of this and 1 ounce of this? Or like they want to know the exact, and I am so like, go with the flow. Sometimes I have difficulty articulating that, but with watercolors, sometimes it just is what it is. I hate that saying, it is what it is, but you just have to get a feel for it. So yeah, like I just make little alien shapes. Just go for it. And so in my quest to go from darker to lighter, so I did 2 of these, I'm just going to add one more swipe of pigment in there. That wasn't wet, so I didn't get any. All right. So now I'm going to add another flower in here. And you decide where your flowers go. This is your piece. And maybe this one I might put over here. But it's all the same technique with these flowers. We're just going to continue to add pigment. And we're going to work from the bottom to the top. So make your stem. Tap in these patches of color that represent the petals. And I'm telling you, when you're doing flowers, just go for it. Because I guarantee you there's a flower that looks like whatever you make somewhere. There's so many types of flowers, so many types of foliage, so many types of grass. I promise you, if it doesn't look like you envisioned it in your head, it probably looks like a flower somewhere. So don't be scared. Just do it. All right, so this is the process. Like, this is it for the flowers. So I'm going to continue this, add in another swipe of pigment, and I'm just going to continue to get darker. And then I'm going to keep adding these flowers until I'm satisfied. So some, I'm going to get larger as they get closer. So maybe this one here. I don't know what these flowers are that I'm doing, but they probably exist somewhere. Susan's talking about eating Mexican food. I'm so hungry. The last time I ate today was at breakfast. I don't even remember what I ate. I don't know. Did I even eat breakfast? I'm starving. I probably didn't. Yes, I like this one. I think it is soft and peaceful. I'm sorry if this is taking a long time tonight, y'all. If I'm taking too long, feel free to come back and watch this on the replay. All right, so I'm going to add another stripe of pigment here. I think I'm going to add in two more. I might add like the big one. I'm going to add in one large one. This is where my butterfly is going to sit. And then I'm going to add, in my sample, I had a small one. I don't know, put it wherever it feels right. I think I'm going to put the small one right here. Oh, I'll tell you what, if I go into the kitchen and the kids ate my Olive Garden, I'm going to kill them. They have pizza tonight. They wanted pizza last night, and I let my son order, and he ordered like, there were only 3 of us in the house last night, and he ordered like this giant extra large pizza and cheesy breadsticks and all kinds of stuff. And so I told him leftovers for him tonight. All right, so these are my flowers. Okay. The ones that I did most recently are still a little wet, but here's what I'm gonna do. I wanna change up this color that I used. Oops, you can't even see my color, I'm off screen. There we go. So I ended up with kind of this fun magenta color. I'm gonna switch it up a little. I'm just gonna add in some purple pigment. This is your flower, so you can, you know, change the color however you want. You just need something a little different and a little darker. All right, so I changed this magenta from magenta to mostly purple here. And I'm going for like medium transparency. So I'm going to add in some water. I don't want it to be super thin, but I don't want it to be heavy and thick like it just was. So thinning this back out. We're going to add some details in our flowers. Watercolor painting that looks, you know, that you're happy with, the key is layers. If you're looking at your watercolor and you're like, it's all right, I'm just not feeling it, add in another layer. I'm telling you, it makes all the difference. All right. So nice, like medium thinness. And here's what I'm gonna do. So my background flowers, like maybe the first two I did, I want those to blend in, no biggie. I might add like a little tap of color here and there on some of these just to add variation. But I'm not gonna add a lot of color. I don't want a lot of color. I want those to blend in. As the flowers move forward, I want to tap in a little more color. I'm working from the background to the front, and I'm just tapping it in. I'm not thinking about it. Just tapping my brush, and it's going to do what it wants to do. Might blend out, it might make a spot, it might make a splotch. Who knows? That's the fun of watercolor. So just tap it in. And that's why we wanted the color to be a little different. It just adds a smidge of variation. All right. I'm going to let the bottom dry. We're going to move on to our butterfly. We'll come back to the flowers. We'll add just a smidge of detail before we finish. But right now it's looking good. We're going to let that dry up. All right. I'm going to use a nice fine tip. I don't know, this is a size 1. I would say 1, 2, or 3 are probably your best bets for this butterfly as far as numbers go. And I'm just going to get some black paint, black watercolor. We are working on dry paper, so what you want to do is just kind of feel here. Make sure it doesn't feel cold or moist, because you do not want this black to spread. That would be very bad. Usually you don't need to pick up a whole lot of pigment, because black is pretty strong. So it's okay if it's thin, it's okay if it's thick, it doesn't matter. Just make sure your brush is not dripping, okay? So for the butterfly, here's my stem, my flower, right? I want his little head to be just left of halfway. I'm just going to draw a little circle, fill it in. And then for the shape of his body, the best way I can describe it, this is a sideways teardrop. Now, the one thing you want to keep in mind, do not touch your flower. You don't want these to bleed together. So I'm going to draw my little upside down teardrop here. Now I can connect to his little head, but I don't want to touch that flower. And that's his body. Now for the wings, I'm going to go halfway down his body. Don't think about the head. About halfway down his body, like right here. We're going to create a rounded, like a teardrop shaped wing. Okay, so find your halfway point. I'm going to mark here kind of in his little tushy. I don't know if butterflies have tushies, but and I'm just going to kind of come around here with black. I'm not worried about being a perfect shape, because there's all different kinds of butterflies. All different kinds. Right now I'm just sketching the outside of his wing. And then his other wing, I'm just going to scoot over just a little bit, maybe like right here. So a quarter of the way down his body. And then I'm going to decide here where I want it to end. So I have my start and stop point. And then I know this wing is going to be shaped a little differently. I want it to kind of come up, go over, come in, and go back out. So I'm going to have maybe a little tip, little mark there, so I know where I'm going. Now what I'm going to do at the edge of his wings, I'm going to paint this part black. So I'm just filling in color. Oops. Right here. And you can, you know, kind of make whatever shape you want. In the sample, he's got kind of a, I don't know why I decided he's a he. I did. He's got a little ruffle. My page was a little wet here. I think I dropped a little bit of pigment or water. Let me show you. This is why you want your page to be dry. See how it kind of blended and moved? I don't want that. But since it's watercolor, I can lift just by dabbing. So that lifted that wetness off. And now I can kind of fix it. I'm not going for perfection here. I just want this little guy to be, he's my little happy butterfly. All right, so take a nice thin brush. If you've got a smaller one than you're using, that might be best. If you don't, just use the tip very, very lightly. And I'm just gonna throw out some little wispy antenna thingies. Whoop. What's the technical term? Antenna thingies. And then I'm gonna give them some little legs that reach down to the flower. So 1, 2, I don't need to add them all. Remember, this is not super realistic, so. And at this point, my flower is dry, so I can touch the flower there. All right, so I'm gonna let that black dry. Now I'm gonna add some details in my flowers here. All right, so pick an itty bitty brush. And then what I'm gonna do now, let's see, I'm gonna pick up a little bit of this purple, maybe a little bit of blue. Again, you're working with your flowers, so pick whatever colors feel good to you. I'm gonna make kind of a blue violet. I'm using a tiny, tiny brush. And what I'm gonna do with the flowers, maybe the 3 that you feel like are the closest, I'm just gonna add a little color on the stem. Just kind of a little shadow. And then underneath where the flower sections meet the stem, I might make that a little darker. So you can, you know, tap in color, or you can kind of paint it in, whatever technique you're comfortable with. I'm just going to add another layer on these flowers that are closer. Thank you, Christy. Colors can be relaxing. I love watching people paint. I think it's because when I was younger, I know a lot of people say this, but I grew up watching Bob Ross. But like as a kid, literally, I loved watching Bob Ross. It was bizarre because kids didn't like sit and watch boring stuff or calm stuff, you know, like all my friends were watching cartoons and stuff. But I really did love watching Bob Ross. It's always been relaxing to watch people paint. All right, you can even go in with a third layer. Like I've got some of this black here. Be very, very cautious when adding black. The tiniest bit. The tiniest bit. But if you want to add in some shadows, it's okay to do that as well. So if you want just another layer of color, you can do that with just the tiniest bit of black. And you're going to want to do that at the bottoms, maybe by the stem. But it's up to you how many layers you add. I'm getting kind of happy with mine. I like this abstract look here. So adding in that color at the bottom allowed my black up here by my butterfly to dry. I want to add some color in the sky. Whoa. So I'm going to pick kind of a, oh my gosh. Do you ever do something and you're like, that was silly, and then you just do it again? Like you didn't just learn your lesson? All right, so I'm going to mix kind of like a cyan blue with a royal blue, get kind of an in the middle color there. I want nice strong pigment, not a lot of water. And this is going to go wet on dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come right around this black edge, and I'm not going to do a lot of brush stroke. I don't want to reactivate the black. I just want to add in some color here. And then I'm going to do the same thing here with the bottom wing. What I'm doing here is putting down some pigment, and this pigment is going to guard from the black a little bit. All right, now I'm going to totally clean off my brush, get some water, and I'm just going to pull that blue. I don't want to dip into the black, but I'm going to pull this blue down into his wing. So I'm going to reactivate it because my paper's absorbed all that pigment. And I'm just going to direct it into that wing and kind of blend it out. Don't stress if it's not perfectly blended at first. Water does continue to move and blend, so this watercolor will continue to stretch out a little bit. So that just gives you kind of a nice, hi Amy, a nice blend there. Deb, no, nobody in my family paints. My daughter is definitely my daughter Charlotte is more of a creative, free spirit, but I think she's more like into acting and stuff like that. She could have the skill to be an artist, but she doesn't have the patience to sit and practice and hone in on her skills. Nobody else in my family is interested. My mom couldn't draw a heart if she tried. It's so silly. I don't know how I ended up doing art. Maybe one day, maybe when she's a little older. Right now she's got all of her teenage stuff going on. All right, so this is it for the watercolor part. Now I do have kind of a secret ending here. I did not put this on the supply list. However, I believe most of you probably have something white. So white acrylic paint, a white paint pen. I'm going to use a gel pen. Like a Posca pen would work. A white colored pencil will work. But I didn't think about this when I was planning. But when this black here is dry, I'm just going to add in some spots on this wing. I'm just going to draw them in. Now, be careful, because whatever you do that is wet on top of watercolor is going to reactivate the watercolor. So some of this black might lift up into this pen. I'm okay with that because I'm not going for realistic, right? Like I'm just going for fun little faraway butterfly on a flower. I don't know what these flowers ended up being. I'm just adding some white into that wing there. If you're feeling it, you could always add little highlights here and there. So you could do this with the paintbrush as well, paintbrush and white acrylic paint. Don't be afraid to experiment and add in another layer. I guess that technically makes this mixed media since I didn't just use watercolor. But that is it. That is all I have for you. So the technique for this one is really just start with a very, very light pale layer and work your way up far away to close. That was the technique with this one. Totally can change up the color of your flowers, can change up the color of your butterfly. You could turn it into a dragonfly. But that's it. I hope you enjoyed the watercolor lesson. I love watercolors. They're super, I don't know, super mind of their own-y. Yes, yes. Don't forget. Thank you, Deb. The breast cancer blessings month. So if you have not yet, please nominate somebody to get a blessing in the mail. That's our goal this month, is to send something to show somebody that they've got support. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Thank you, Deb, for posting my link. You can find me at facebook.com/Painted Cicada, or if you're watching me at the Painted Cicada, you can join me in the art and craft showcase. So let me put that link in the group if I can. I don't know if that'll show up. I don't think that shows up in the group, but I don't think it needs to, because if you're in the group, you don't need the link, right? So if you're watching me on the Painted Cicada, you can also join me in the future in the art and craft showcase. Lots of good stuff happening in there. Thank you all for joining me. Have a fantastic Thursday. I'm going to go eat my Olive Garden, and I'll join you tomorrow to make some art in the art and craft showcase. Have a great day, everybody.